Okay, you have no idea if this is true or not, but I will tell you that this is true. We are now on take number 5 of this. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to play the Kahoot game that we played on Friday, and through technical issues and such, it didn't go quite as smoothly as what we had hoped. So here's how we're going to play the game today. We're going to reveal the questions, and I'm actually going to read them. I know that irritates some of you, but listening to just dead silence, it will be a little more irritating. Because remember, you're going to be watching this on YouTube, so you could actually just pause the question and take as much time on the question as you want to. Because literally, after we reveal the question, we will reveal the answer. Well, I'll pause like 2 seconds and then I'll reveal the question. And then Lisa and I'll have some discussion if necessary on that. Okay, so get ready because the first question will be coming right here in just a moment. Good luck. The health concern most closely related to asbestos is lung cancer, headaches, throat irritation, neurological damage. And of course, you know from your lesson that asbestos is associated with lung cancer. Most commonly, you'll hear mesothelioma, but another question is coming up here in just a moment to show another term that you might want to relate to asbestos as well. Question number 2. Intact asbestos is not normally an issue. If it's friable, it could lead to problems. Friable means A, having an acrid odor, B, seeping through fissures in the house's foundation, C, crumbling and deteriorating, D, damp and dank. Friable means crumbling and deteriorating. And worse yet, when asbestos crumbles and deteriorates, it becomes airborne because it's such a small fiber and it's so light, it can become airborne. That's when you can breathe it in, and that's when the concern for lung cancer appears.
What would you say about it? It's hook shaped, is that right?
Yeah, it's a microscopic hook-shaped fiber. And unfortunately, it's very efficient about if you breathe it in, it attaches to the linings of your lungs or your stomachs. Very efficient. The EPA has actually said there's no acceptable level of acceptance to asbestos. Question number 3. Which of the following is true regarding the remediation of asbestos? A, only safe way to deal with asbestos is total removal from home. B, state law requires known asbestos be removed before home sale. C, venting friable asbestos allows it to dissipate harmlessly. Or D, encapsulation is safe in many cases for remediation of asbestos. And the answer there is encapsulation. Now you've seen a couple of associations I want you to have for asbestos. Asbestos, you know, the health concern lung cancer, it's mostly a problem when it's friable. And then we talk about the remediation. Asbestos that is intact, you're probably just as well off to cover it so that it doesn't become airborne. Elisa had mentioned earlier when we were discussing this about shingles on a house. Now you think about this. My dad's house was built in 1954 and it had shingles. All the shingles are in fact intact. And so therefore it's not going to be an issue. And what we did is we covered it with vinyl siding. So we never have to worry about it becoming an environmental concern. All right, Lisa, you get to do the next question.
Which of the following is true regarding asbestos? It is a colorless gas, which if inhaled can cause lung cancer. Microscopic fiber, which if inhaled could cause asbestosis. Asbestos is found in paints used prior to 1978. Asbestos results from processing of resins in construction.
Okay, after your pause, you see that it is in fact a microscopic fiber. We were just talking about that, which if inhaled could cause asbestosis. Now, when you look at asbestosis, it's very possible you didn't talk about that during the class. I rarely use that word. I would be more inclined to use lung cancer or mesothelioma, but hopefully you knew that enough of that sentence was correct that you could take a shot at asbestosis and know that that was correct. And notice that the other answers also had something that was plausible in them. And what I mean by plausible is they come up in the same chapter, but they just come up in the chapter related to another type of health concern. So that was a really good test question for you there. All right, you want to try another one?
Sure. Which of the following is not true regarding radon? Has a strong foul odor when it builds up in enclosed area, seeps from ground through tiny fissures in soil and house. Radon is the second leading cause of lung cancer in the U.S. The presence of radon above 4.0 picocuries is always a material fact.
Yeah, as you're looking at this question, notice that the answer here is that it has a strong foul odor. Radon is a colorless, odorless gas. That used to be a very common question on the exam. So literally just knowing that point might actually help you get this question right. And then a couple of the others here, they sound good. As a matter of fact, when I was reading this question to start with, I was like, wait a minute, more than one of these things are true. And that's when I realized to go back and read the question and realize that it was a not question. Now, having said that, they tell us on the test that there aren't going to be not or except questions, maybe some except, because there are some laws that have exceptions, but you're not going to see a ton of questions like this, but it's a good question to practice test on. The EPA recommends mitigation of radon if household readings are A, 4.0 joules or greater, B, 4.0 BTU or greater, C, 4.0 picocuries per liter of air or greater, or D, 4.0 decibels. And of course, the answer there is 4.0 picocuries per liter of air. For residential purposes, that's what has been established as the point that it gets problematic. And by the way, exposure to radon would need to be long-term concern at 4.0 picocuries per liter or higher. Notice the rest of those are all words that if you study science, you possibly had heard, but they have nothing to do with radon. So oftentimes when you're making your cue cards or whatever it is that you make your flashcards, make sure that you're relating words that go together, and that in and of itself might be the answer to the test. All right, Lisa, let's try another one here. Your turn.
What is the health concern associated with radon? Radon is the second leading cause of lung cancer in the U.S. Radon causes birth defects. Radon can cause stomach disorders if it is ingested. Radon can cause autoimmune diseases.
And after a pause, you'll see that the answer is A. Radon is, in fact, the second leading cause of lung cancer in the United States. Now, obviously, smoking is going to be number one, but radon has consistently been up in that area. When you look at some of the other problems, again, they are plausible, but they are not correct. Pretty well written question on that.
You're saying that because you wrote it.
Maybe so. Which of the following methods would be appropriate for the mitigation of radon? Is it A, encapsulation, B, ventilation, C, removal of source, or D, repair? And the answer there, of course, is ventilation. In other words, radon dissipates harmlessly if it's allowed to get out of the house. The problem with construction now is a lot of construction is built so tight that we actually run the risk of holding the radon in. So the series of fans and vents to get rid of radon is actually very effective. Next question, your turn.
Which of the following provide reliable evidence of an elevated radon level? Presence of stone on the property, topography and soil composition, proximity to other houses with high radon levels, radon test performed by an inspector.
Hopefully with a little bit of thought on this one, you'll recognize that this is the case. Well, if it's a colorless, odorless gas, the only way you're going to uncover it if there is, in fact, a test done. A lot of the other answers on there, you actually hear people in the field, they'll say stuff like this. They'll say, well, golly, in this area, there's not a whole lot of stone on the property, so you don't have to worry about radon. That is not true. You never know whether a property has radon unless, in fact, you do a radon test.
And that does say by an inspector, right? Because aren't there like home kits that people can use, but
Yeah, they're not extraordinarily accurate. I would lean toward an inspector on that.
okay.
Question 10. Buyer terminates contract due to radon inspection results of 3.2 picocuries per liter of air. Which of the following is true? Is it A, the listing agent will be obligated to disclose to future buyers? Is it B, buyer is entitled to refund of all money spent on the property? Is it C, no disclosure by seller nor agent is required? Or is it D, the seller will be obligated to mitigate the radon problem? Interesting thing about this one is there's no disclosure by the seller that's required. According to our contract that we use commonly in North Carolina, it establishes a line of 4.0 picocuries per liter of air as being material on that. So in theory, this house goes right back on the market. It does have a test of 3.2 picocuries, and the seller would, nor the agent would not be obligated, excuse me, to disclose that. Let's see what else did I want to mention about this one. Oh, also, if you get readings that are high regarding radon, remember the seller is never obligated to mitigate it. They may end up losing a deal because of it, but they're never required to mitigate. So that one was off as well.
The seller of a house built in 1975 will be required to do all of the following except remediate any lead-based paint on the property, give buyer 10-day risk period to see if lead-based paint in the home, provide an EPA pamphlet regarding the dangers of lead, complete disclosures as to seller knowledge of lead-based paint in home.
Again, let me remind you, this was an accept question. Very, very good for practicing, but I'm not quite as concerned on the test. But I can just say so much in an accept question. The seller is not required to remediate lead-based paint, even if they know this. The buyer can walk away if they choose, but the seller is not obligated to remediate. Notice that these others are specifically required by federal law. The seller has to give the buyer a 10-day risk assessment period if he chooses to use it. He doesn't have to choose to use it. They have to provide an EPA pamphlet. It's called Protect Your Family from Lead in the Home. They have to provide that. The sellers are obviously going to rely on their agents to get it, but they could get it off of the commission website easily enough. Complete disclosure as to seller's knowledge of lead-based paint. Now, notice what it says there, that the seller does, in fact, have to disclose if they are aware of lead-based paint in the home. But trust me, most sellers would never know unless they had the house tested. Question number 12. The health concern associated with lead-based paint is lung cancer, stomach cancer, neurological damage, or arthritis. And after a pause, of course, you see that the answer associated with lead-based paint is neurological damage. But notice how we keep throwing in the others just to try to tempt you into lung cancer and stomach cancer. Students always want to believe that something causes cancer, but that's not the association with lead-based paint. Question number 13. Regarding lead-based paint, the term target housing refers to, is it A, all properties of public accommodations, B, residential and restaurants only, C, residential properties built prior to 1978, or D, daycare centers? Take your time on this one. Okay. Now, when we talk about target housing, Lisa had mentioned this is not a word that she remembered from studying for the test. And I get it. It doesn't come up that often. You'll probably get it maybe once or twice in your notes. However, look at what it's called, target housing. So what you could do is you could back into this question by just eliminating anything that's not housing. All properties of public accommodations turn out to be things like government buildings, school buildings, theaters, blah, blah, blah. Clearly not housing. Blue was interesting, residential and restaurants only, But since it said restaurants, it would not apply because that's not housing, and daycare centers, of course, are not housing either. So you literally could have backed into residential properties. And then obviously by this point, all of you are associating the date 1978 with lead-based paint. When I see lead-based paint in 1978, I'm honing in on that question. Now I'm going to verify it to make sure it's true. But having said that, I'm certainly honing in on lead-based paint when I see 78. All right, Lisa, are you over your coughing spell now? Can you read?
I'll try. Lead is considered to be especially dangerous for all of the following except children, pregnant women, women of childbearing years, elderly.
A little bit of a crazy question here. Don't feel bad if you're like, what are they talking about? The fact of the matter is, lead is considered to be a problem for children. The by extension, you could throw in pregnant women and women of childbearing years because if it's a woman of childbearing years, if it stays in your system, it could affect the fetus. So as it turns out, at the end of the day, elderly housing is actually exempt from the Lead-Based Paint Act. I don't know if you got that in your notes or not, but senior housing over 55 is exempt from the act. And you say, well, why is that? Well, first of all, elderly people are not notoriously going to be putting paint chips in their mouth. And secondly, it's sad to say, but since they're at the end of their lifetime, it won't have time to build up in their system. And you might say, well, women of childbearing years are not eating paint chips either. No, but notice how I worded this question. I said lead. I didn't necessarily say lead-based paint. The concern with lead is neurological damage in children under the age of 6. Elderly are exempt. All right, next question. Which residential property built before 1978 would be exempt from the lead-based paint disclosure requirements? Would it be a property that is leased on a year-to-year lease, B, a foreclosure, C, a house that is being sold by an heir of an estate, or is it D, a property in a Section 8 program? Any comments on that one, Lisa?
Explain, please.
Okay. Well, first of all, one of the things about foreclosures is they're going to be exempt from almost all disclosure requirements.
Okay.
And the reason is by the time it's a foreclosure, what has happened is the bank owns it, they're selling it, and they just simply say, we don't know anything about it. We just took it over because someone didn't pay our money.
Okay.
So the foreclosure is the right answer. A lot of people get confused about the lease and the lead-based paint disclosure requirements are actually required when you lease property. Having said that, on a lease, they don't have to give you a 10-day risk assessment period. They still have to do the pamphlet. The seller still has to disclose if there's any known lead-based paint. They just don't have to do the 10-day risk assessment period.
Okay.
Now, heirs are not exempt. This is one I have to deal with my agents all the time, is that heirs believe that they are exempt, but that is not true. And then a property in a Section 8 program. Section 8 is it's kind of a subsidized housing program, and certainly they're going to be obligated to make sure that they follow lead-based paint disclosure rules.
Gotcha.
Number 16.
Site of dry cleaning store for sale. Chemicals have seeped into the soil. To investigate concerns, contact a commercial real estate agent, contact an environmental assessor, contact an environmental attorney, contact a structural engineer.
The answer on this one is to contact an environmental assessor. And to be quite honest with you, none of them are horrible answers. Well, I don't know what a structural engineer would know about environmental concerns. But if you contacted a commercial real estate agent or commercial environmental attorney, probably what they would do is refer you to an environmental assessor. So it's not that the other questions were horrible. It's just the best one to do the investigation is the environmental assessor. All right, question number 17. Which of the following is a material fact which a listing agent would be obligated to disclose? Is it A, the presence of polybutylene pipes? Is it B, a radon mitigation system? Is it C, the presence of an abandoned underground storage tank? Or is it D, the presence of undisturbed asbestos shingles on a house? It's a good question.
This is a good question because this comes up all the time with people who have their license.
Yeah, that's a true fact. Hey, now listen, there's nothing wrong with you disclosing any of these, but when we talk about a material fact, there comes the issue of whether you're obligated to disclose it or not. What do you say about polybutylene pipes and why that's not the right answer?
It's not the mere presence of polybutylene pipes. It's if the pipes have ever leaked, because that was the problem.
Correct. If there was a history of leaks with the polybutylene pipes, then it would certainly be a material fact. Radon mitigation system is interesting. You would think that with a radon mitigation system, you're like, hey, it looks like you had a radon problem here in the past, but that's not necessarily true. A lot of new homes today actually put in passive radon mitigation systems, and so therefore it wouldn't necessarily be material. And if they put in an active system with that, which actually has the fans in it, it's kind of obvious at that point because you will see the unit that drives the system. And then, as we mentioned earlier, undisturbed asbestos shingles in that house, they're encapsulated. So typically speaking, that would not be a material issue, whereas underground storage tanks always are. As a matter of fact, even if it has been taken care of, remediated the underground storage tank, oftentimes there is a recorded document called an NFA, which means no further action. That means someone has come in and checked on the abandoned underground storage tank, made sure that there's not going to be an issue in the future, and recorded a document that said no further action necessary on this tank.
Which of the following is true regarding environmental issues encountered by real estate agents? Undisturbed asbestos can be safely removed or encapsulated. If a test reveals the presence of lead-based paint, it must be removed. 2 weeks of ventilation will safely remediate a meth house. Atmospheric radon linked to a high incidence of lung cancer.
Take a couple of seconds and look at those, and your answer is
It's not meth.
no. The answer is undisturbed asbestos. You have two options here. Remove it or encapsulate it. If you remove it, then I would recommend you have someone that is licensed and certified to remove asbestos. Let's look at the other answers real quickly. If a test reveals the presence of lead-based paint, it must be removed. That's not true. Now, once a test has been done and reveals lead-based paint, the fact of the matter is that if the house goes back on the market, the seller's going to have to disclose it next time because they're obligated to disclose the known presence of lead-based paint. Having said that, they're not required to remove it. Ventilation will not take care of a meth house. It's much trickier than that. Meth actually gets into the furniture, it gets into the carpets, it gets into it gets into the drywall. So a lot of the time that has to be just all taken out. And typically the sheriff's department has a list on houses that have been involved in meth raids and stuff like that. So you, as an agent, you would have the ability to find out certain information about that. And then the final one, atmospheric radon linked to a high incident of lung cancer. The point we were going to there is radon in itself not good, but radon's only a problem if it's in an enclosed environment. If it gets out in the air, it dissipates harmlessly in open air. So atmospheric radon's typically not going to be an issue.
I think that one confused me when I read it the first time.
Yeah, yeah. So we put the right words in there, and then we just took a little curveball on it.
Carbon monoxide detectors are mandatory in all of the following residential properties except houses with wood-burning fireplaces, houses which use oil and or gas heat, houses that are all electric and have a detached garage, houses with gas stoves.
Now, if you're watching this and you have not yet gone over the landlord tenant chapter, which I believe this class has not yet, this one might not be automatic to you. But let's go and look at what the items have in common here as I reveal the answer. Okay. Notice the one that is accepted, houses that are electric and have a detached garage. Now, there's two things that's interesting about that. An all-electric house is not going to produce carbon monoxide because carbon monoxide is created by the burning of fossil fuels. So if it's all electric, it's those fossil fuels are being burned somewhere else. And if it has a detached garage, the idea of the attached or detached garage Attached garages, you do actually have to have a carbon monoxide detector. And the reason for that is if it's an attached garage, how many times have you heard stories in the past where someone would leave their car idling in the garage? And then, of course, if they leave it long enough, that carbon monoxide could seep into the house. You don't have that concern with a detached garage. That's why that one is wholly correct. And then if you look at the other off answers, each one of those is burning something that would produce carbon monoxide. And then your final question. All of the following are true statements regarding environmental concerns, except A, formaldehyde is a VOC linked to cancer in lab animals. B, PCBs used as a coolant in transformers are probable carcinogen. C, CAMA regs help development in sensitive estuarine environments. Or D, high levels of mold in a property indicate a high moisture issue. You're looking for the exception here. Can I go backwards?
Oop, I think you skipped it.
The answer to that question,
I think it was Camma.
I can tell you, I can go off what I remember on those. I apologize for that. I can get you that question if you need it. If you ever see formaldehyde, what it means by a VOC, formaldehyde, manufactured materials will actually what they call off gas if they get really, really hot. Off gas, and if you've ever been inside a like a mobile home or a some type of RV, and you notice that smell that hits you in the door when on a new one, if it's a hot day and you walk into it, what that is the off gassing of the formaldehyde. Is a volatile organic compound. That's what the VOC stood for. It has been considered a carcinogen to lab animals, but it's never been considered a carcinogen to humans. It's an irritant. So you might walk into that trailer I was talking about, and it might start, you might start coughing, but it's not going to cause lung cancer in humans unless you were to be exposed for long, long periods of time. Let's see, what did the answer turn out to be? Regs help development in sensitive estuarine environments. The point I wanted to make there is CAMA stands for the Coastal Area Management Act, and actually it makes it more difficult to develop in sensitive estuarine environments. In other words, it doesn't say that you can't do it. It just puts more restriction on it. If you want to build a bulkhead or if you want to build a pier out into the water, it's not that the answer is no. It's just that you might have to go through a couple more steps to get it done. And then it was obviously true that high levels of mold in a property indicate a moisture problem. If you have mold, you have moisture. That's what the answer was. So anyway, I hope that helped a little bit to go through those. Make notes to yourself as you're coming through this. Watch this on YouTube. Stop and start it as many times as you need to, and we'll be glad to elaborate on this. But in the environmental section, you can narrow it down to some really good guesses about what you're going to be tested on. Lisa, is there anything that you'd like to say to wrap that up for me?
Yep, I think that's good.
All right. Thank you guys for taking a look at that. And we're also going to do one regarding, do you remember what the other topic was? Finance. We'll do one on finance as well. See you over there.